Hello, and thank you for joining us for the session Transitions, Breaking Down Barriers to Conversations When Treatment Options Change. I'd like to thank our sponsor, GSK, for making this session possible. In this session, you will join Oncology social workers Tracy Moore and Nancy Cincotta for a conversation about and beyond advanced care planning. Tracy Moore has more than 20 years' experience as an oncology social worker in both hospital and nonprofit settings, and she now leads patient support here at the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance. Nancy Cincotta is a nationally known psychosocial oncology expert who serves as a consultant to hospital, academic, and nonprofit organizations, including OCRA. You can view their full bios right here on the conference website. Thank you for being here, Tracy and Nancy, and I'll turn it over to you.
Welcome. My name's Tracy, and I am OCRA's oncology social worker, and I welcome you to Transitions, Breaking Down Barriers to Conversations When Treatment Options Change.
And I'm Nancy, and I too am an oncology social worker and a consultant with OCRA, and we welcome you to this session.
I want to thank you for coming today. This is a pretty intense conversation, and it takes a lot of courage to come and participate in this, and it takes a lot of resilience and hope to want to explore this. So we thank you for taking the time to be with us and to hopefully provide a context for conversations around decision-making beyond advanced care planning. Nancy and I are oncology social workers and have been for a very long time. And I think it is with that experience that we have witnessed and we have shared in many of these conversations. Nancy, is it true we have over 70 years of experience between the two of us?
Yes.
In this world, which seems extraordinary and fun at the same time, because hopefully within the context of this conversation that we're having, we can normalize the process of conversation, because in so many ways, allowing yourself the ability to talk about this and to think about it, building a framework can really help ease some of the stress around decision making.
So we want to applaud you for coming. I want to just echo what Tracy said, and to reiterate that sometimes difficult conversations are difficult because of the content and subjects that may seem still in 2021 a little bit taboo to talk about. But sometimes it is just because we have not had the opportunity to have the conversations or to think these themes through. So what we really want to do today is treat this as though it were a conversation. And for you, it may be a conversation you've had many times and with many other people, or it may be the first time that you're thinking about these issues. So be prepared that sometimes the issues that we're going to talk about can feel emotional, but that also this is just a beginning framework for your own thinking and to make these conversations easier in your lives.
No, absolutely. You know, we're going to talk we'll go back and forth a little bit around advanced care planning and then transitions in care and decisions. But advanced care planning is the decisions about healthcare you would like to receive when facing a medical crisis. And these are decisions based on your personal values, preferences, and discussions with loved ones. And that can be an important message to think about. We wanted to, though, talk really more about something that people ask me regularly, and that is, when do you know? When do you know it's time to maybe stop the tried and true treatment and really focus on quality of life and symptom management, and maybe think more about end of life planning? And that's different for everyone, absolutely different for everyone. And there's no easy answer to that. ultimately, I think you have to think about what brings you joy, listen to who you are, what your goals are, how you want to spend time. But in doing this, I think it's really important that it gives you the ability to think and create a roadmap for yourself. Um, just thinking about what you want to accomplish, um, who you are, and what you're thinking about. So I we put up some different ideas, and sometimes at this juncture you're thinking about, do I want to go on a clinical trial? What's important to my friends and family? And what does quality of life mean to me? Right? I talk a lot about goals of care, and those are discussions you have with your treatment team and your physician around how you want your medical care to be handled and what's important. And then there's the what matters most to me letter, which is something that came out of Stanford that is almost like a thought board on what is important. I like to spend my time doing, and then you can fill in the blank. I like to be with people that are most important to me. And it actually helps you think about the questions that might stimulate the conversation.
It's interesting to think about these questions in a couple of different contexts, right? First, when you are at a beginning stage, initially learning of your diagnosis, and then as you go through treatment, if you reach a stage where, the words we use were when tried and true treatment is not available. So some people will be very inclined to go on a clinical trial, to do things to push science forward that may or may not be helpful in their individual situation. It becomes a time for you to think about, how do I want the course of this phase of my life to be? And we talk about and have in the references the what matters most to me letter. And we were talking before that this is a bit like kind of a tool you might have learned as a child, the highlights. What's the right word, Tracy, that I'm looking for?
Mad Libs.
The Mad Libs, right? So that you can fill in the blank of, here are the things that I'm interested in thinking about now. What's really true is that some of these things are things that it would be helpful for everybody to think about at all different points in their life. As a society, we plan for weddings, or when I get married, or when I buy a house, or when I do things. And the interesting thing, if you think about it as humans, is that at some point in each of our lives, we are all going to face the end of our life, which is really universal, but we do not spend time thinking about what's important to me at that phase in life. So whether you are anticipating that phase in life, not near that phase in life, or you're there, it's really interesting to think about what really does matter to you at this point, at this juncture in your life.
Thinking about what's important in this juncture, right, can also change. I think that's one of the things that it's like a maze and a haze of decisions. And sometimes you may slow down, keep going, pause. There might be something you might, for instance, decide to stop treatment for a little while, to recover, to feel stronger, and then decide later to push ahead and try a novel therapy that's come out, or try something new. This is not a linear path, right? It really is something that can ebb and flow in all different directions. I think,
and that's precisely what I was going to say about it, that this is not linear in your decision making and in the formulation of these ideas, that you may, according to what's going on in your life, decide, right, I'm going to be attending this event in 4 weeks, and I want to be feeling my best, looking my best, and I don't want to risk maybe feeling sick from a medication or having different things, so that you begin to prioritize the things in your life in a different way. What experiences do you want to assure yourself that you haven't? And there may be things in this process that you can't control, but maybe the things that you can control are things that you want to control, so that you can be the driver of the bus in this situation, and in this stage in life, seeing what's in front of you and thinking about what you want to do, what you want to achieve, who you want to see, where you want to be. Like, if your happiest time is being at the beach in the summer and you have a choice of whether or not you're going to go on a clinical trial, in July or in September, you might choose September. On the other hand, if you can't stand the heat and you really love the fall, you might choose to enter that trial sooner. And if you need a break from treatment or from that trial, you might want it to be kind of in the fall that you do it. So there's a way in which we use the word reframing, right? And it's like thinking about the things in your life in accordance to the situation in your life at that moment. And you've done it throughout your whole life. When you've had a child, when a grandchild has come into the family, when there's been some other emergency, when COVID happened, when other experiences have occurred. But sometimes when we think about reframing things at the end of life, we think about it in a sadder and in a more negative way. And it can come with sadness, but it also can come with an opportunity to be kind of honest and clear about where you want to be and how you want to be doing things. And again, the kinds of experiences that you want to have and who you want to be involved. So when we talk about the maze and the haze, that's because of all the things happening and all the changes, but there can also be some clarity in the process as this happens.
We don't want to touch too much on this, but in terms of healthcare decisions, right? There's the decisions you have that are emotional, and then there's decisions that you can do in a very concrete and legal way. And these are the legal options you have, right? In terms of assigning a healthcare proxy, or writing a living will, creating the 5 wishes document, or even a mulst and post, which are medical orders around your wishes at end of life. These are the concrete medical decision-making legal options you have, right? And Nancy and I did a presentation last year on advanced care planning that is on OCRA's website that really is the nuts and bolts of estate planning and healthcare decisions. And we encourage you to see that if that's to answer some of those questions. We wanted to acknowledge that those are some of the thoughts you might be thinking about in this process. But for the purpose of this discussion, we really want to talk more about managing the emotions and the decisions on how you want to live your life, right? And what becomes most important to you. Making decisions based on who you are and how you want to live is probably, if you walk away with anything from this conversation, it is that, right? It is about making decisions on who you are at that time, right?
Yeah. And the life that you want to live may be different at this point in your illness journey. It may not be the ideal of what you wanted, but within the context of where you're at and what's going on in your life, you are still able to create the life that you want to live. And sometimes many different individuals have told us that it is at the end of their life that they are able to create and move with peace into just doing the things they want to do and being the person that they are, without some of the feelings that they've had at other times in life, the constraints they've had at other time, that in essence there is that feeling of, this is my life and this is what I'm going to do with it now. So again, I think it's context is really important, but there is also that sense that sometimes people wish that they had come sooner to this way of thinking, right? About making decisions about the life you want, not what you think is best for everybody around you and um, for the world, but for you within your world and within your circle.
It's creating a plan and a framework is equally important, not necessarily on how you want to die, but also how you want to live. And but once you've made some of those decisions within yourself, there's their piece then of how do you communicate those wishes with your family and friends, and how do you reconcile their ideas versus your ideas, and where does that strike a balance for you, where you feel peace in your decisions, peace and comfort in your decisions, and what plans do you make, and what do you let go of, allowing yourself to make crucial decisions of, do I want to continue to work, or is there something that I've always wanted to finish and accomplish, and do I want treatment right now, or do I want to take a break and to focus on myself and my family and whatever else you determine that's really important. So it's about making plans, but sometimes it's also about just breathing through it. And sometimes you don't have to make the plans, right? It's not planning is also a decision. So it's about having the freedom to breathe through and to explore and to
To
think
make your
about.
own choices, right? Like
Yeah.
to think about what options are in front of you. And I think like work is a really interesting thing. Like, do you want to be working at this phase in your life? There are people for whom work is such an important feature that they really want to work throughout every component of their life. And that's an important choice to make. Do you want how much time do you want to spend if you're thinking about having a limited amount of time, and where do you want that time and that effort to be? Kind of who are you, what's important to you? And I think that the message in this is that anything is okay, but there is a foreign nature to this. Like I think about it even when I look at this slide when it says like, what do you communicate with family and friends? So think about it. Like, do you ever like, and I was going to say pick up the phone, but I think with cell phones it also might be like, can you see texting somebody or saying, hey, like, I think I'm not going to live for a long time. I'd like for us to do this, or like some of the conversations, or even how you say what you say seems unusual and complicated because again, they're not the kinds of conversations we have. But like, how do you let the people know who are important to you that they're important to you today and they will be important to you forever? And how do you allow people themselves the time to process what you're saying to them, because it may not be that everybody is so comfortable with you being in a position of wanting to talk about these issues if you want to talk about them. So I think what what we want to be giving you as a takeaway message here is however you choose to lead your life at the end of your life is really okay. It's you get to make the choice. You get to decide if you want to be a talker, a planner, somebody who wants to engage everybody else in what's going on. But it's also okay if you're somebody who wants to be more private and quieter about what you're feeling and what you're thinking. We want to help you think about finding peace within your own soul, within your life, and the context of what you want. And if it's important for you to talk and connect with people, then we want to help you think through talking and connecting with people. If you literally want to live your life as you're living your life right now, completely in the same way as you can, then we want you to do that. I think that this is about figuring out where you are on this journey and how you want to continue the journey. So again, our goal is to give you some ideas, but not to give you directives on how to do this, because you are the person making those decisions. Now, you may also be somebody who says, you know what, I want some of these things, but I want somebody else to do it. And I think, again, that feeling of being in control of your life does not mean that you have to do everything. It means that you need to kind of make the choices and communicate about it.
You know, another question that we get asked all the time is hospice. What's the difference between palliative care and hospice? And I think it's an important distinction. And it's also there because there's such similarities. Palliative care is really, and hospice share the fact that they manage symptoms, and symptoms can be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, right? But the difference between palliative care and hospice is that palliative care is something you can seek at diagnosis and through treatment and through end of life, right? It really is about symptom management. And it is something that can help with pain, discomfort, nausea, neuropathy, any different areas. And it's something that you can talk to your team about, having a partnership with a palliative care team. Hospice is a transition to working solely with the hospice team. It is they become your primary medical team, and rather than treatment, focusing on cancer treatment, it's solely focusing on symptom management. There's a distinction that you do assign your insurance benefits to hospice, so that it really is a level of care that you may choose to embrace. Most of the time, hospice is provided at home. On occasion, it can be inpatient hospice, but for the most part, it is an at-home process or in a facility process. And it is something to think about. When you would get them involved, why you would, why you wouldn't. There are really good studies that show that people who have had hospice not only have a better quality of life, but for many have a longer life when facing death. But it is really a choice, and it is something that you can make in terms of the different options you have. But it takes a thought process of, do you want to be at home? Do you not want to be at home? And what does that mean for others in your family?
I think it's an important thing to think about, because sometimes what may be right for us as individuals may not be right for children who may live in the household, or for different individuals. So that, again, you need to think about what the environment you want to create at the end of your life is. And it's interesting to, I recently reviewed an article about people being discharged from hospice care. So for some people, sometimes what happens is you get to a hospice program and then you reach a level of living, and the quality of your life is such that it's a comfortable place, and you are at that place for a much longer time than anticipated, so that there are more people who are being at times discharged from hospice services and then perhaps re-engaging them at a later time in life. It's also interesting to think like what you have in your head about what hospice means, what palliative care means. And sometimes we create our own resistance to those services because we don't want to be categorized in a certain place. And I think it's important to hear again that palliative care is the kind of programming that can be helpful to anyone once a diagnosis is made, and that hospice as well can be a tremendous asset in maintaining and minimizing symptoms, treating symptoms. And I think that if you think about it, people who work in palliative care and who work in hospice care do this for a living. So they are very familiar with this experience. They're very familiar with this stage in life. For many of us, when we reach these stages in life, it may be the first time that we're getting there. So there's a lot that we don't know, and we're not the experts in, and we don't know maybe even what we need. So it's very helpful to even at least consult with people in palliative care and hospice programs so you know what services are available, you know what kind of help is out there, because it may be things that you kind of cannot imagine within the framework of the life you have lived. And in thinking about how you get those services involved, it becomes really important to work with your healthcare team to help you make those decisions, those choices, to take those steps. It's also interesting to think who you don't want involved at the end of your life. So as important it is to think about who you want involved, it's important to think about who you don't want involved and how active or inactive you want to be in making those choices. Like some people have literally felt so connected to people in palliative care or hospice programs, they feel like they've become like family. For other people, they really don't want someone who is not related or who they see as a stranger in their home or coming into their lives. So you need to think about, again, who you are and the kind of services you may need.
There's all different changes in life, right? And it's like a decision tree in terms of, and probably it's true from diagnosis, right? Right from diagnosis, it's you had a plan, you were on a path, and then all of a sudden that path changed and you had to really make different choices. And those choices might be, where you treat, what type of treatment, do you continue to work, do you not, who do you need to have helping you, do you need help? And those decisions change throughout treatment, right? Whether you're thinking about maintenance, whether there's a recurrence, whether there's been multiple recurrence and you're looking at different treatments, whether you're thinking about a clinical trial, whether you're thinking about end of life, and decisions, not only have a lot of junctures, but decisions can change. You can really think, this is what my plan is going to be from the time of diagnosis. And I know that when I get to point B, this is where I'm going to go. And you get to point B and all of a sudden you're like, no, I think I want to diverge from what I originally thought and move in a different direction. I think the concept that decisions evolve is freeing, and it is something that you should feel confident that it's not that the decisions or the framework or the roadmap that you've set up for yourself is failing. It's that we as humans change and evolve, and really living in the moment and understanding who you are in the moment is really the message that's potent, because it's about who you are now and where you want to go next. So as those decisions change and evolve, allowing yourself to experience that and to recognize that you don't have to be set in a decision, that you can change. I mean, you can really change in terms of, I've stopped treatment for a little while and now I think, I'm feeling stronger, I feel better, I want to try something again. That's a decision you might have. Or it might be a decision that is around, you thought maybe you would try a clinical trial and you've decided, no, I really want to be home and that's what I want to do. I don't want more treatment. The decisions evolve, and you should give yourself permission to allow that experience.
I think that in addition to thinking about decisions related to treatment, it's also interesting to think about decisions related to other components of your life, right? So if you own a business or you own a house, or you will let yourself think a little bit out of the box, right? And think about, if my life were to end tomorrow, how would I want these things set up? And who would I want to participate in these things? So again, like a house is a really interesting thing to think about. Do you put your house into some kind of trust so that at the time of your death, whoever you want in your family to own that piece of property will be able to easily get that? Or do you feel like you want those things to all be taken care of after your death? And that becomes a little bit about who you are. And as we talk about kind of creating your own legacy, everybody works in that way differently. Some people want to make things easier for other people or want to know that all those issues are taken care of. And some people feel like, oh, that's okay, they can deal with it. And you are not a better or less good person in how you choose to do that. But it is actually interesting to come to peace with those things, like the material items in your life. But there's also these other things, like what if you always wanted to be a painter? And you have to debate, like, do I want to spend money on that now? Do I want a painting teacher or a painting coach? That some of the decisions seem very little, but may feel more important than some of the bigger decisions. So I think about when you think about the evolution of decision making, that it really is on all different levels. And you also may feel exhausted by making decisions, that you might not be able to decide certain things. And I guess the message we're going to give you with that is that that's okay too. That is in and of itself a decision to decide, you know what, I've made enough decisions in my lifetime. Now I'm going to create a partnership with a healthcare person I feel really good about, or with my own partner, and I'm going to say, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want you to do. And I think, again, it's about kind of communication and how you want to enter into communication at towards the end of your life. Now, this is interesting to think about, and I think that it may feel like we've said this already, but I think this is your narrative. This is your life. You're the person writing this story, having lived this story, creating the story, and thinking about how you want people to remember and read this story.
Some of us are planners and some of us aren't, and there's no right or wrong. But sometimes even the best laid plans, right? Our bodies won't comply, right? And decisions will be made for us and not by us. And that's something to recognize and try to think about as well, because as you are making decisions, sometimes decisions truly are made for us, right? And listening to your body and letting go of some of the plans might be part of this experience. Maybe reframing those plans, maybe finding a way to still let them happen might be part of it, or it might be reassessing and shifting the plans. So it's just something to think about.
And to prepare yourself that you may have a range of feelings in this process, right? That we're talking about some of these issues as though they are normal, everyday issues. And there is a sense of loss and a sense of grief that is going to be a natural component of the journey at the end of your life. And we're not suggesting that you will not have those feelings and you will not feel sad or feel lost or confused or out of control. We are suggesting that there are sometimes things you can do and you can think about that help you put your life in a context that can feel both bearable, comfortable, peaceful for you. And thinking about that every life has a beginning, a middle, an end, and that everyone will experience the end of their own life and often the end of the lives of many people that they care about, and that this is a component of who we all are. And you get to make the choice about how you want to live out that phase of your life. And again, to think about, you know, there is no great story we can tell you about, here's the plan, here's how you do it, how you follow the directions, and this is how it happens. Because there is an element in all of this, again, that we cannot control. But it is true that sometimes people feel as though they've had enough, they've done enough, they want to reach a place where they are comfortable enough to say, I'm okay with my life ending. And I think that that may be a goal for some people, it may not be for other people, but that, again, to think about the end of one's own life in the context of, from the time we are born, there is going to be a time that we're going to die. And that may not feel comfortable, but in fact, that is the most assured thing in everybody's life path, that there is an end to that life. This is an interesting conversation that Tracy and I have been having, like what you think today, or what you thought last year, or what you think next year really may change. And that it is important to be kind to yourself and to allow yourself the feelings of change, and even sometimes to contradict yourself, right? Like in our own lives, there are ways in which we contradict ourselves, that we change decisions. It's why there's a lot of, comedy programs that have mother-in-laws changing their wills about who's in what role in their life. And some of that is because your thinking does change and the way people interact with you changes, and that's not, again, a negative thing. It is part of a process and a life process. And there are things that are happening around you. In this past year of COVID, we've had a lot of people that we know who've not wanted to go to the hospital at certain times when they might have gone before because of what the risks were or what the situation might be. There are people who may have opted for different treatment planning, things that they could do from home. So you can never predict what's going to happen in the world. And I think any of us who've lived through these last couple of years really come to understand the uncertainty with which days bring. So sometimes it's about learning to live with the uncertainty and having that uncertainty be okay.
Life is filled with difficult choices, right? And one message is through those difficult choices, trying to live and live fully the life we're given is really important. As you're making decisions, allowing yourself to live and to experience life in the moments that you have as fully and as filled with joy as possible is really an important gift. Having hope is also important. And I think it's true that hope is with us at all times. It's just a matter of what hope looks like. So sometimes hope evolves to a different place, a different hope, a different wish. But allowing that to fill us with hope is an important piece. Nancy, you talk often about hope. Is there more to hope that you think?
Well, I think it's interesting for people to think individually about the role of hope in your own life and in your own illness, right? That at the beginning, before you're diagnosed, you frequently think about hope in a particular way, and you're being worked up for a diagnosis, and you hope that you're not going to get a certain diagnosis. When you get that diagnosis, you often hope that you will be among the people who will do the best with that diagnosis. So even if science tells you one thing, you believe that you will be the person who is most successful, and often you will be that person, or you may be that person. And then when you think about a world in which recurrences happen, with each recurrence, you hope for the best in that situation, but you reframe what you're thinking. You may no longer feel like you're on a track that will make the illness not be a dominant theme in your life. It may be that you're going to live with this illness for the duration of your life. And I think that as you come towards the end of life, some of what you look towards is hope in the comfort and the peace that you find in those days. And I think that it's interesting to think about that you may reach a point where what you hope for is a peaceful and a pain-free death, and that there really is a continuum, and where you put your spiritual beliefs and what you hope for in who you connect with um, after your life is over, where you bring yourself in your thought, kind of always holding on to hope, but having the hope be within relationship to the context of where you are. So always as a partner in this experience, but reframed over the course of time.
It's hope as a partner is a really nice concept, and a comforting concept for sure. And trusting that you'll know at each place, and if you don't, it's okay, right? I think it is about just trusting and living through and utilizing hope as a partner. We've talked a lot about making plans, and are you a planner, and how do you envision this stage, and who do you want involved? But it is most important that this is a different journey for everyone. Who are you? And figuring out who you are can be a helpful tool, right? Just understanding, like, are you someone that needs to plan, or does it feel better when you have a little bit more control? Is it easier just to let go? And maybe that you were controlling before and now you want to let go, or maybe before you were very free and let life happen and now you want a little bit more control. Like, where do you fall? What category? And who are you at each of those junctures we talked about can also help you in your decisions and in your planning and finding peace. It's not an easy process.
And finding peace is something that you think about, right? And I to do this with words, but like thinking about the pieces of your life and finding peace in those places, right? That it is not all about the end of life. The possibility of the end of life should bring forward a certain degree of freedom about the current life you are living. And what do you need today, even if you're going to live for a long period of time, to find peace in your life, to make your life the life you want it to be. And it is never too late to create the life you want in the moments that you have, or the days, or the weeks, or the months, or the years. So it's an interesting exercise if you're watching this presentation because you're at a time in life where you're nearing the end of life, or you are far from it, or you have a friend who is going through this experience. It's helpful to think about, what if you always wanted to let go in life? If you could let go of anything, what would you let go of? What would that be? And then if you wanted to feel comfortable with your life, content with your life, what would you need right now? So again, interesting things to think about at all different stages in your life.
When you think about life's wisdom, right? What have you learned about yourself in this process? This process of life, this process since you were diagnosed? And what have you learned about others along the way? It's an interesting reflection that not everyone takes the time to think about. And it might be a choice that you make not to think about it, but it also is an opportunity. Nancy said this just, in the previous slide, like this concept that this is not necessarily something you have to do when facing a serious illness. This can be something that you do, this planning and this thought each year of your life, or it can be at important junctures, right? It is this reflection can help you in your life's journey, and it allows you to decide what's important to you at all different times. But it also like helps you identify, I think, what you want to share with others about your lessons learned, right? And those messages. I think that I don't know. I think doing this work, it's taught me that you want to share a piece of yourself, and you want to remind your loved ones and friends that you love them. And that has been a very freeing message for me. But what's your message? May be very different than that, right? It's you might find that you want to laugh more, or go on more adventures, or let go things. Like, what have you learned about yourself can be a really powerful piece, and those lessons for your loved ones might be a gift.
And I think that people will often say that what they've learned is that they're stronger than they thought they were and more resilient than they thought they were. And then how do you translate that? How do you translate what you know now, weeks, months, years into your diagnosis? What have you learned during Rand? What could help the people in your life, or what do you want to be sure that they know about what you know, right? Like, in a way, maybe you have a secret that you want to share with people now because you know something based on your life well lived, right? And thinking about how do you impart that part of your thinking to the people that you care about.
And when you think about creating your own legacy, right? This is how do you want to be remembered? And what secret do you want to share? This is an activity for yourself and for your loved ones. And it's an activity of the living, right? And it's something to do today, and it's active, and it's powerful. It's a powerful piece to creating your own memorable self, right? Of who you are, and what you've brought to this life and to others, and how you want to be remembered.
It's important to take these ideas outside of the end of your life, not the weeks or the moments before you die, but backing it up to thinking maybe you even begin to have conversations with, again, children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, students, mentees, and thinking about how you help people evaluate their lives along the way and make those adjustments to the life that you want to live. Maybe you're somebody who wants to publish a lot of things, or maybe you're somebody who wants to have read a certain author's entire work, or that there are pieces of how you put life together that when you thread them all together, they become the fabric of your life. And how do you want to create that fabric now? And what do you want people to see in that, like in the design of what is your life? And then if you can think to the future of what was your life. And I think that there are moments in this where we connect to kind of our own existential self and think about ourselves both in the moment, in the past, and in the future. And that you think about what would you like to see on this planet, in this emotional space, after you are no longer alive. And again, it seems to me that it's something you could start talking about when you're 20, and when you're 80, like that there is a a big range, but that it could be helpful to keep the framework close to your own soul about who you want to be and what you want to be remembered for.
When thinking about some of these decisions, you might think about what others have done, right? And how that can help. What secrets did they share with you? And how might that help you build a contextual framework for decisions you might make in the future? It's like, what have other people done at the end of their lives that have felt right to you and made sense to you and resonate in a way that might be something you want to embrace or not embrace? Like, that's the magic of this. But like, what are some of the things that other people have done? I think that, we talk about reading or going to the beach or to your special place in the mountains. It might be planting a garden, right? It might be planting a garden. Like, it can be a lot of different things. But what are some things that other people have done that have resonated for you? And what are some things that you wish you could do? Whether that's at the end of life or as a celebration of your life, right? What might bring peace for others?
So interesting in taking a moment, reflecting on your own life and thinking about what the end of life of other people that you've cared about has revealed to you about your own life and about what you may think about that you would like to see both done for you and also things that you would like to do in your lifetime. And I think that we all have experiences that we, and we've even had different experiences with the same experience. I've been present in a number of situations where people have released butterflies at a memorial service or at a funeral. And then I've been in situations where people have tried to do that and that has failed. That the butterflies either wouldn't go or the butterflies didn't survive the process they need to survive to be released. So you think about, like, what can you tolerate? What do you want to create? But really, there is a revealing feature of this, because when we attend other people's funerals or memorial services, even though they're about the other person, they're also a little bit about ourselves, because they make us think about our own mortality, and again, what we would like to see and what we would like to have happen.
And I think we've had the experience that sometimes people choose not to wait until death to have a celebration of life, right? And to actually have a party with their loved ones and friends and being part of it. So it is like, this is so different for everyone, and what makes sense for some might not make sense for others. But it is about finding meaning, right, in the message.
Finding meaning, and I think sometimes finding people to talk about these things with you so that you can figure out what you want and what's doable. Because again, as we're talking about our own end of life situations, we may not be in a position to create these things or put these things together, but in fact, we have people in our lives who may be able to take these ideas and move them forward. When we think about things that people have done that have worked for them, it's important to just think about kind of who you are and what you want. But one of the interesting things I've had happen in a number of cases is people kind of writing letters to people, maybe even years before the end of their own life, that they have the direction to be sent out at the time of their death. It's a very interesting concept that I've had a number of people do, and really interesting kind of what the value is then that for people who survived. And again, you can say with a degree of honesty to people things you might not have said in life, but you want to be said. And you don't bear the consequences, right? But you hopefully achieve something in the doing, of that.
There's power in sending those messages, leaving hidden notes, doing all these things. But I've also worked with people who at the end of life have said, now on my to-do list, I was told I should write messages for people and send cards, and I'm exhausted and this is not what I want to spend my time with. So sometimes it's about giving yourself permission not to do these things and not to feel the burden that these are your responsibilities.
Right.
This is really about living your best life and doing things that feel right to you, and not necessarily the to-do list that people have suggested will be what your tasks are. So just to give yourself permission that these are all like ideas, but not necessarily responsibilities.
There's the to-do list, the to have done list, and what the list is. And I think it's a really, really important point, right? Like what you don't have to do. And I think that you have to do whatever it is you want to do with no expectations that you have to perform in a certain way.
Right, exactly. So, and it's about creating your own ritual. In terms of funerals, like some people really plan their funerals out, know what they want. This is the family tradition. This is my tradition. This is what I want. This is my religious belief. This is the plan. But other people have not thought about it at all, and you don't have to think about it, right? You may choose to let that be someone else's decision, or you may decide to plan. But
I also think that sometimes all you need to do is to be sure that you have people around you that you love, that you're talking to, and who are listening.
mm-hmm.
Because I think that, when I use the example, my mother was very clear that she didn't want to wake, and she didn't tell everybody that because she didn't want to hear everybody else's reactions, but she kind of made pretty clear that she didn't want people looking at her after she died. And I think that that was an important thing in my life for me to have heard, to be able to carry out in her life. Alternatively, I have heard now a number of people who've chosen, instead of leaving money for kind of certain things after death, that have planned a party for themselves, invited the people they cared about, and then let it be a memorial that was created about them, but by virtue of them having provided the guest list. And that's a very interesting thing. Like, again, that freeing feeling that you can suddenly not be worried about who you invite or what you do, but do something you want to do, and maybe be a little crazy, maybe be very, very private, maybe be shy about dying, maybe be bold about dying, but to know that there are choices and things you can do, or maybe even to say, I want to be buried with, and you fill in the blank as to what that means. And I don't mean another person. I actually mean, an object or something that is important to you in life that you would like to take with you when you leave this existence.
So as we start to come to a close, I think asking for help is a really important message, and because none of these ideas are easy, and creating the space to discuss these ideas are really important. And even if you're a little intimidated about starting the conversation, the more you start talking about it for yourself and with others, the more normal it becomes, right? And it can be a very freeing and easy conversation if it becomes routine and it becomes normal. It really, it doesn't have the expectation of finality, rather than it can be a process and an evolution. But you have a choice on how you want to manage your life and how you want to manage your affairs. But it's really about how you value your life and thinking about it and considering it. So support's there if you want it. Don't hesitate to ask for help. If you want to continue this conversation, you should not hesitate to call OCRA and ask for me, or ask your friends, or ask your family. So, and not asking for any help is okay too. It's a topic that is courageous to consider and to explore and to manage your choices. Where you die may be a choice or a circumstance. So allowing forgiveness for that in both aspects is important. And being an active or inactive member in these choices is also a decision. You get to choose who you are in this stage and all stages of life.
And we want you to know that somewhere in your head, we would like you to feel our support and encouragement that it is okay to think about these things, to begin these conversations, to think about what you want, to be a little bit kind to yourself and allowing yourself to think, but this is really, I really do want people to remember this about me, or I want this to be my legacy, or I want to start this organization for people to help other people in this way, and to really just recognize that it is not an easy journey to think about the end of one's own life or the end of a loved one's life, but that in fact it really is a part of everybody's life and a part of your life, a part of our life, and that there is a normal inclination to want to think about it, to want to talk about it, to be sad, to be afraid, but yet also to allow oneself to come to peace about it.
I think we've learned a lot in all aspects, whether it's a diagnosis, a traumatic event, this pandemic. And we don't only learn about living, but we learn about dying.
And I think it's important to recognize that we also learn that there are things we have no control over. There are things that happen suddenly, quickly, and that, again, in an instant, it feels like the world can be transformed, and you may not live the death that you would have chosen, but that in fact, the more you think about this now, the more you are able to at least have a connection to the way that you die, or the way that the people around you that you care about die. It becomes important to think about, is planning your funeral something you would do? Again, we plan so many of the events in our life. How come we don't often plan our own funerals?
So doing a LifeWorks project, right, is really like a toolkit on how we want to live, how we want to die, how we want to record our accomplishments, determining our goals, recognizing our life's work and life that can work. But I want you to think about this as we end. I will. Nancy, do you want to talk about I will?
Sure. It's interesting if you want to think about your life kind of today, right? If you did this as a quick prompt or writing exercise, and you think about, I will remember, I will honor, and then I will, you fill in the blank. And you think about, like, sometimes thinking about, what will you remember about this period of time that we lived through COVID? What will you remember about when you were diagnosed? What will you remember about when you learned of a recurrence? I think one of the interesting things about this is if you were to let yourself do this, once a week on Fridays, and then you look back over the weeks and the months, you'll see the themes that emerge and that stay consistent for you. And maybe it will help you think through both the ways you want to live your life now and perhaps the way you want to live your life at the end of your life. And it will become part of your legacy to have these ideas written down someplace in a place where, again, you can choose for them to be very private or you can choose for them to be available to the people who care about you.
So we leave you with some resources, and we leave you with the ability to contact us at OCRA. And I think we leave you with a message of hope, right? And that the hope that you will walk away feeling like you've learned something, thought about something, that we've brought something to the forefront. But most importantly, I think I want you to walk away knowing that you are really brave and courageous and amazing for joining us for this conversation. It's not an easy topic for some, and it really takes a tremendous amount of strength and resiliency to come and think about this and to be ready to embrace it and to be ready to be part of this discussion. I thank you for being with us today.
Again, I just want to echo that. And if you have any other ideas or you think there are topics we didn't cover, please reach out to us at OCRA and think about how you have reframed hope in your lifetime, and think about your connection both to this life, but also your connection to your own narrative about the end of your own life or the life of people around you. And know that it is okay to think about those things. It's okay not to think about those things, but that dying is as much a part of life as living is. And we thank you very much and really appreciate you tuning in. And again, you've made it to the end of a difficult conversation, and we hope it helps you with the difficult conversations in your life.